In the previous discussions, we explored several sequential thinking frameworks and how they strengthen discriminative intelligence. In this talk, we shift focus from what these frameworks are to how useful they actually are in practice. Every thinking framework is a tool, and like any tool, it has contexts where it excels and situations where it can mislead. Used well, these frameworks bring clarity, rigor, and sound judgment. Used blindly, they can slow decisions, hide blind spots, or oversimplify reality. So in this session, we'll examine the merits and demerits of these sequential thinking frameworks, and more importantly, learn when to use which framework, how to combine them, and how to apply them for maximum effectiveness. This is about moving from knowing frameworks to using them wisely. First principles thinking is powerful because it forces us to confront reality without shortcuts. One of its greatest strengths is that it eliminates false assumptions. By stripping away habits, conventions, and "this is how it's always done," it allows us to see problems as they truly are. This is what makes first principles thinking especially effective for radical re-engineering, when incremental improvements are no longer enough. It also aligns naturally with physics and engineering, where outcomes are governed by fundamental laws. When you reason from core truths, energy, force, material limits, logic, you gain solutions that are not only innovative but also physically sound. However, this power comes at a cost. First principles thinking demands deep subject mastery. Without a strong understanding of fundamentals, it's easy to strip away the wrong assumptions or rebuild on shaky ground. It is also time-intensive. Breaking problems down to their roots and rebuilding them carefully takes effort, and it's not always practical under tight deadlines. So when should you use it? First principles thinking works best when you need a clean slate approach, when existing solutions feel constrained, outdated, or fundamentally limited. It shines in domains rooted in the physical sciences and engineering, and in situations where radical change, not optimization, is required. In short, use this thinking framework when you need to reset the problem, not just improve the answer. Abductive thinking is the intelligence of making progress when certainty is unavailable. Its greatest merit is that it works early in the problem-solving journey, when information is incomplete and patterns are just beginning to emerge. Abductive thinking helps us form initial hypotheses instead of waiting for perfect data. This is how scientists often begin, by observing fragments, noticing anomalies, and asking, "What could reasonably explain this?" Because of this, abductive thinking closely mimics real scientific discovery. It allows intuition and logic to work together, enabling movement in situations where formal proof is not yet possible. But abductive thinking has clear limitations. Because it relies on plausibility rather than certainty, it can become error-prone if used carelessly. A hypothesis that feels convincing may still be wrong. That's why abductive conclusions must always be treated as tentative, never final. Without verification, abductive thinking can easily drift into assumption. So when should we use it? Abductive thinking is most effective when situational variation is limited and when we're dealing with new or unfamiliar phenomena. It is ideal for diagnosing unexpected behaviors, exploring unknown systems, and forming research hypotheses that can later be tested. In essence, abductive thinking is not about being right immediately. It's about being directionally useful and knowing that the next step must always be validation. Hypothetical deductive thinking is the discipline that turns ideas into evidence-backed knowledge. Its greatest strength is that it forms the cornerstone of the scientific method. By requiring clear hypotheses, testable predictions, and controlled experimentation, It provides a reliable way to separate what seems true from what actually holds up under scrutiny. This makes it exceptionally well suited for controlled experiments, where variables can be isolated and results can be measured objectively. Because of this rigor, hypothetical deductive thinking is invaluable when we need to test theories, rule out competing explanations, and build claims that can withstand challenge and replication. However, this rigor comes with trade-offs. The approach is slow and resource-intensive. Designing experiments, controlling variables, and collecting sufficient data takes time, effort, and often significant infrastructure. It also struggles in ambiguous or open systems, where variables cannot be fully controlled and outcomes are influenced by many interacting factors. So, when should we use it? Hypothetical deductive thinking is most effective when the goal is validation rather than exploration. When you already have candidate explanations and need to determine which ones survive testing. It is ideal for narrowing down possibilities and establishing evidence-based conclusions. In short, this framework is not about speed or flexibility. It is about confidence, credibility, and proof. Systems thinking is the framework we turn to when problems stop behaving in straight lines. Its greatest strength is that it reduces unintended consequences. By focusing on relationships, feedback loops, and interactions, systems thinking helps us anticipate how a change in one place can ripple across the whole. This makes it exceptionally powerful for complex problems, where outcomes emerge from many interconnected factors rather than single causes. Because of this, systems thinking is especially effective when dealing with entire ecosystems, such as economies, regulatory environments, technological standards, or social systems, where decisions in one domain inevitably affect many others. But systems thinking has its challenges. Complex systems are hard to model fully. Not all interactions are visible, measurable, or predictable. As a result, systems thinking can sometimes become overly abstract, making it difficult to translate insights into concrete actions if we're not careful. So when should we use it? Systems thinking is best applied when the goal is to understand long-term or large-scale impacts, and when ignoring interdependencies would likely create downstream problems. It's particularly valuable when decisions cut across multiple domains and when short-term optimization could lead to long-term harm. In essence, systems thinking helps us avoid solving the wrong problem by ensuring that what works locally also works globally and over time. To step back and look at the bigger picture, what these sequential thinking frameworks really offer is intentional control over how we reason. They help us slow down impulsive judgment, surface hidden assumptions, and choose how to think before deciding what to think. Each framework strengthens a different facet of discriminating intelligence, clarifying fundamentals, navigating uncertainty, validating beliefs, or anticipating systemic consequences. Used thoughtfully, they sharpen judgment, reduce error, and improve the quality of decisions in complex real-world situations. But empowerment comes not from memorizing frameworks. It comes from knowing when to apply which mode of thinking and when to switch. This flexibility allows a person to move from confusion to clarity, from assumption to evidence, and from narrow solutions to resilient ones. In essence, these frameworks transform thinking from a reactive habit into a deliberate capability. And that is what elevates discriminating intelligence from merely recognizing differences to making wiser, more impactful choices.